Hello, I'm Mischievous Marcinacchio, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, Amazing Fantasy number 15, and all of the annuals, which I say do not count. In fact, I would say nothing can stop me from not counting the annuals of Amazing Spider-Man, Dan.
Well, I'm going to say something can stop you. And that something is me, Dapper Dan Gavosden, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the annuals, which I say definitely count. But for me, Amazing Fantasy 15 remains a fantasy.
Welcome to the Amazing Spider Talk, this show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks for joining us for the penultimate episode of the 8 Depths of Spider Talk. Sorry, I shouldn't show my enthusiasm that much in the intro, Dan.
Well, it's also the penultimate episode of Volume 6, which is wild to think about how many volumes you and I have kind of found our way through. We started in Volume 2, and now we're almost at Volume 7. A pretty wild ride over here. But if you want to swing along with us on our 5-volume spanning journey through Spidey's past, present, and future, subscribe to Amazing Spider Talk on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review. These reviews are super important as they're the best way to spread the word about the show and indicate the size of our audience to guests and collaborators.
This podcast exists because of the support of our Patreon members. If you want to receive early episodes and exclusive artwork and keep this podcast going, go to AmazingSpiderTalk.com and consider joining our Patreon. On the Patreon, we've already kicked off Season 7 of the Amazing Spider Talk, where the first 6 episodes of that season are already available. So if you want to join our conversation about the David Michelinie era, consider joining the Patreon.
Yeah, today on the show, Mark and I are going to be discussing Amazing Spider-Man Volume 6, number 69. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I had to be the first one to go with that joke. This issue was written by Joe Kelly. The cover features artwork by Ed McGuinness and Marcio Menyz. The interior pages feature pencils by Ed McGuinness, inks by Mark Farmer, colors by Marcio Menyz, and, of course, letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. This issue was first released on March 12th, 2025. The way I wanted to start with this, I think, is to really start with the kind of like superstar of this particular issue. And that's the return of Ed McGuinness, who, we've been up and down on, and all over the place, across Volume 6 of Amazing Spider-Man, about Ed McGuinness and his partnership with Zeb Wells and now Joe Kelly. But I really think that this is some of the best work from Ed McGuinness that we've ever seen. Not used on a story that I really care all that much about or characters that I needed drawn by Ed McGuinness.
Sure.
But his reappearance here really shows like the difference, what a like really, really strong artist can do to carry a book like this. He is the McGuinness-NAUT to this book. Nothing can stop him, not even like hammy dialogue or characters I don't care about. Like, I found myself at the very least captured by this particular issue because it was so darn attractive.
Sure. I mean, it's funny, over on the Season 7 feed, Dan, we just recorded our episode about the Todd father, Todd McFarlane. And, one of the things that we were talking about was during his adjectiveless run, how he kind of got criticized and, probably deservedly so for some of his books just basically being all splash pages. And, he kind of justifies it in interviews being like, no, it's more than that. It's, I'm doing dramatic poses and stuff. But this comic opens like a McFarlane adjectiveless Spider-Man book. It's just like one big splash after another. And yeah, I mean, you could argue whether or not it's a little overindulgent a la McFarlane, but it also, I don't even know if I say it works as much as it was, like you said, attractive to see, and it at least gave this story a punch that it had been sorely lacking the last few chapters, where it just seemed like it was really running on fumes in terms of the direction. And did the story and the plot and the writing really elevate in any kind of way here? I mean, it's an improvement, but not, I don't think, by leaps and bounds, but like McGuinness's art will make this, I will say, memorable, for lack of a better word, but it is. You know what I mean? Like, because it's so starkly unique and visually driven in a way that I don't know we've gotten in a Spidey book in quite some time.
Well, like you said, it's a lot of splash pages and like big spreads of tons of characters that are laid out in really interesting ways. Like he uses Sidorak's like head and profile to kind of frame a lot of these, or the lightning or whatever blight attack that's coming out of Calyx to like create all these little panels and stuff. And it took me back to that kind of the end of the Green Goblin storyline that we got that had all of the different moments from Peter's life where he was overcoming adversity, and like that would have been a complete eye roll under anybody else except for the fact that Ed McGuinness really just nails it and does all the heavy lifting emotionally on those pages. And the same is true here, you know, all the way down to like actually like selling me on the creepiness of the blight with these little sort of like spider-like viruses that are leaking out of people's eyes and mouths and any kind of orifice that they can find, you know, versus the sort of just, you know, the Bricardo stuff where people's eyes were just white and maybe there was a wisp of something and it was kind of all over the place. These are like distinct, creepy little things. You know, there's just a lot of real care that went into the pages here to elevate all of it. And he really paints with a sort of like epic brush on all of this. And when you have a story that's like, you know, dipping into the cosmic and magic and bigger stuff, you know, I think his kind of sweepingly dramatic, exaggerated, you know, splashes, Todd McFarlane style stuff, you know, really is the right match for this material. And, you know, I wonder what this story would have looked like if he had been given the time and space to do most of the chapters of this. You know, I think I would have enjoyed the story a lot more. Maybe it's still not connected with it in its terms of how it's structured, but like, I think some of these moments might have been, you know, delivered in a way that I bought them under Ed's pencils.
Well, it's so funny that you said that, Dan, because like the next sentence that was about to come out of my mouth before you said that, I'll still say it, obviously, was like, I kind of, you know, in retrospect, wonder what this whole storyline would have been like if maybe, you know, creatively the writers took themselves a little less seriously and they just kind of like leaned into this being a big indulgent 90s style book with big splashy art and just dramatic poses and big figures and, you know, like really leaning on the scale of, you know, and framing of certain characters being larger than life, because they're these like, you know, cosmic powered beings that are, you know, returning every year or 7 years or whatever the heck it is. I mean, I don't even know if we've established like how often they come back and do this, just that Strange would do it over and over again. And I think, I don't know if I necessarily would like be like, wow, this is such a great story for doing this. But like, I think like it would have just been more thematically aligned with what we're ultimately getting and probably made just some of this better. I hate to be so derisive of what came before it, but like it just felt like, you know, the hang-ups of this story, and granted we have one more chapter left, so I, you know, there's I guess technically time for it to stick the landing, whatever that is, but like, you know, the hang-ups of this story from my standpoint is that, like, you know, the Joe Kelly and Justina Ireland took this exercise very serious. Like we're going to tell a serious Spider-Man story here, and it's a literally absurd concept that really has no business being a Spider-Man story. So why don't we just like do really sexy, splashy art and you know, be radical and throw some pouches and guns or whatever? And I don't care. I mean, like, let's just have fun with it. And this issue had fun visually for sure.
I mean, I think the approach you're describing kind of showed up in the first two issues of this story, which I don't know that we loved. And maybe that's more down to like how much was crammed in and how that story was kind of like being laid out. And the stuff I think, at least I feel like I responded to, was the stuff that did take it a little bit more seriously. but like leaned away from the sort of like bigger, silly, like, sillier stuff. But I think it's the merger of these things that they didn't find a way to balance. Like the minute we got into like Peter, we should take the silly God stuff just as seriously as we take the Peter stuff is where it really fell apart to me. Like let Peter's life be serious, but let all the monsters that are coming to fight him from this other dimension be kind of silly challenges. And I think that might have been the more winning formula here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I think we could say the first few parts focused more on mechanics, and I think those first few Justina Ireland ones really focused on character. But then I feel like it went back to mechanics, but not the character, but also didn't have the art that we got from McGuinness. So like, yeah, it kind of just all kind of fell apart after that. But let's talk a little bit about Joe Kelly, though, right?
Yeah, he's back after what? He's been gone for 3 issues now.
Has it? Yeah. Okay. I mean, are we counting the point deaths in that 3, or are you counting just ASM pure?
Well, we're talking what, 66, 67, 68?
All
they were
right,
all
yeah,
Justina.
okay.
So he's been gone for 4 issues if you really want to go that direction, or 5 if you want to do the 65 deaths. It's been a bit since we've had Joe Kelly on the book. And I don't know. I do actually think, despite all of our talk about Justina Ireland being like the new champion for this book after reading issue 63, which was probably preemptive, or definitely preemptive.
Yeah.
I actually think that Kelly's voice here was more fitting to the kind of story that I think you're describing and that
Sure.
they seem to want to tell. Like looking back on the Justina Ireland stuff, especially compared to this issue, I feel like she just didn't care about this stuff.
Right.
And was kind of forced to kind of move forward these plot elements that she didn't really buy into. But when she was allowed an issue to just write character stuff, I think that probably suited her better.
Yeah.
Here with Kelly, I think there's some decent character writing here. It's, it's very surface level, characters we haven't super invested in. But I do think his language here, as often, I wouldn't call it confusing, but it is like vague in many ways and haughty in terms of like describing love and all of that stuff. But it's the big, bold kind of like silly, proclamations of like open-heartedness that you might expect from a like superhero comic that's doing like these kind of big, silly adventures of this sort.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, I guess I agree with all that. I mean, I do think your assessment of Justina Ireland is appropriate in terms of maybe where her interest lies. I mean, with that said, like, this is. Yes, Joe Kelly's voice is more apt, I think, for this, but there's just some clunky stuff in this throughout.
Yeah.
I recently marked the 15th anniversary of the Rage of the Rhino story, and I don't know necessarily if the knife isn't as sharp in Joe Kelly's cabinet right now or what, but like it just. I read those stories and I read these, and it's just like I said, it's just so like there's just a lot of clunky, clumsy stuff that I don't know. You're not reading this for the story, is all I gotta say. I hate to be so nasty about it, but like I just like Calix to sister, I don't know whether to kill you or marry you, like. Like, what do we...
Yeah, probably not good to play F, marry, kill with your sister. And like, what is it with Joe Kelly and marrying sisters? Mary Jane, I love you like a sister. Like, I don't know whether to kill or marry my sister. Okay, Joe Kelly, we get it. Your sister should probably get a restraining order. I don't know what is going on here.
And like even like the big reveal with Sidorak at the end, it's not that he's paralyzed necessarily. It's that he's frozen because he's lost something that he learned to love, And I'm just like, these are like these are freaking demons that are trying to like consume the world or whatever their motivations are. I mean, like frankly, that was never truly clear at the beginning of this story. Like, what do
Yeah.
they want? I don't know. But like, it's just
Well,
like,
we also find out here that he didn't know about the blight. So
right.
so really, what did he want? I don't know.
Yeah.
I truly don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like that's the thing. Like, I mean, not for nothing. I'm also like, the Spider-NAUT reveal all, aside, I'm just like, what are we resolving in this next issue? like, because we're so far gone from, the 8 deaths and the Scions and the trials and the Reeds and all that. Like, I'm just like, so how does this end? Like, not literal, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, what are the mechanics that are left at this point? Because it all just seems to be broken to hell. But like, like I, I joked about it in the recap. I did appreciate like Syra kind of like, what makes Peter so different in this realm, which is like, it's not so much that he cared about the death, he cares about the lives. So it's like, okay, that's a good line for Spider-Man here. But then like, when they kind of did this like double head fake with Sidorak and he cares too. I'm just like, no, he doesn't. This is a stupid twist. I'm not buying this at all. Like, what have we just read for the last 10 issues? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, like this giant demon guy in a chair I mean, like it's so vague because it's like, oh yes, he has been frozen all of his existence because he is experiencing lost because he learned how to love. Okay, well then if it's about that, tell me what he lost and loves so much that it's paralyzed him.
Right.
Don't just yada yada it,
Yeah.
like we got to get to something here.
Yeah. I mean, is he mourning the loss of his children? I mean, like he literally sends them out and they die at the hands of Doctor Strange every whatever. We already established. We don't know how often they do this, but you know what I mean? Like
I mean that's already a better way to sell it. Like, like you're half convincing me there that like, oh, he's like sad that he has to let his kids die. Yeah. Like, but the book doesn't do that work.
No, the book doesn't do that work at all. But like but even that, like, even if they like attempted to do that work with whatever it was that I was able to glean that from, it's just like, yeah, but like, how do you explain away like just the entire existence of this game that they're playing? Like, and whatever, it's still nonsense at its core, just because like, oh, well, it's now more tonally accurate nonsense because Joe Kelly is writing it doesn't negate the nonsense. That's my point here, Dan. It's like, okay, like it's more tonally aligned, but I'm not buying most of this. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, the big thing too is like it's still structurally unsound, and we're gonna get to that in the second half of the show. But in the meantime, Mark, why don't you tell people where they can join in our conversation?
Sounds good, Dan. Hundreds of listeners like you hang out in our community of Spider-Man fans on Slack. The amazing Spider Slack community is absolutely free to join, and you can jump into active conversations with awesome people about collecting, conventions, movies, new comics, old comics, and more. Dan, what's been going on in the Slack this week?
Yeah, Mark, actually, the Slack has kind of been a buzz with all the new announcements from Marvel that are coming up. And I'm curious to get your take on if any of these have kind of caught your attention over the past few weeks. I'm really excited because Chip Zdarsky is coming back to Marvel and will be writing Captain America, a character that I think has really kind of stagnated for the past, like, I don't even know how long it's been since the Nick Spencer run. Yeah. Which I liked. I liked the Nick Spencer run, I think, more than the average person. But,
sure.
That's really exciting to me. I don't think they've really known what to do with this character for a long time. We've got, just yesterday, we learned about The World to Come, the return of Marvel Knights that apparently has been in the works for like 7 years from Joe Quesada and Christopher Priest. That's kind of returning to the world of like Wakanda and, that Christopher Priest is famous for writing, Black Panther stuff, and Quesada is doing art for the first time in like almost a decade. So that's pretty cool, I think. We've got Daredevil, Cold Day in Hell, which is a sort of like, I think, Old Man Logan Daredevil style story from McNiven, whose stuff I haven't seen in an age, and Charles Soule. And we've got this amazing looking, at least the cover looks great, Death of Silver Surfer. It's not Silver Surfer Requiem. It's the Death of Silver Surfer by Greg Pak and Sumit Kunar. I mean, it's basically like the early aughts are coming back between Ultimate going strong and Marvel Knights and all of that stuff. At the very least to me, these books are exciting because it seems like maybe Marvel is learning to give talents a place to play in their world and do interesting and exciting things. I don't know. Did any of these titles catch your eye over the past few weeks?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, like, obviously, like, having Chip Zdarsky back and, like you said, Cap has just been like, and they keep putting like big names on Cap, and yet it's not like moving the needle for that series at all. Like, I thought if anything, JMS maybe would resurrect it, and I haven't really been reading it, but it doesn't sound like...
That first arc is good. That second arc is an all-time disaster.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'd be curious to see what the world to come ends up being. I'm always good for a good, like Daredevil is probably next to Spider-Man the only book I religiously buy at this point, regardless of the creatives. So I'm down with that. I love me some Silver Surfer, though that might just be something I wait to catch up on Unlimited. I mean, that's the thing. Like, these are all like interesting. It's interesting, like, it still begs the question, like, if all these other characters can do something unique or interesting, the one that we podcast about on the regular, what's going on there? It sounds like nothing dramatic is going to shake that except for, Pepe Larraz. There's your shakeup.
All of our hopes lie in Pepe Larraz. But yeah, I mean, and then, on the counter to this, there was there's been this kind of social media, like a backlash to Marvel, these kind of continual calls for financial reforms with Dustin Nguyen calling them out, and Heather Antos from like an editorial point of view, so, like, talking about how little the editors are paid. And I know, because like I have gone after that, that position at Marvel over the years, and like looking into, should I invest in maybe trying to go down this route, as I was a comic editor for a short period of time. And, like some of those roles, just to kind of peel back the curtain, like, as much crap as we give the editors, they're paid like $40,000 a year in New York City to survive. So, like, you know what? Like, God bless them. Like anything above like poverty wage and poverty effort is probably what Marvel deserves, paying that little. But and you can't help but also think about like Peter David, who I don't know if you saw this, Mark, has a GoFundMe out. As he's back in health problems and can't pay his hospital bills. And I don't know the story about why he's, Medicaid has kind of booted him off. And I don't know that he needs to tell us necessarily, but, it just goes to highlight, just how difficult the life of a freelance writer, editor, or artist can be, and how, much these companies that make billions of dollars are not bending their ear to help,
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, certainly Peter David's Smart Hulk was, part of the biggest movie of all time a couple of years ago, and yet he can't afford hospital bills. So that sounds, that kind of shows the injustice right there.
I mean, there's definitely a like begging Romani joke to make here, but I won't be the guy to make it.
Don't do it.
Anyway, come join us in the Slack. There's a link in the description of this episode that'll get you right in to talking with everybody there. It's always a fun time, and we hope you'll come and join us and say hello. But let's get back to our discussion of The Amazing Syra, issue 69. Mark, this is my big problem with this story, and it's one that I think I texted you after I read this book. I said, # Mark was right. And you were like, well, what does that mean that I was right? And I said, I think you'll see when you read the book, and I want to get your feedback now.
Sure.
Like, do you feel like you were justified now having read this issue in this regard?
I mean, look, I'm never one to turn down a I'm right situation. I mean, like, I relish these things, especially in the context of this show. With that said, like, I don't know if it was like a huge, I mean, the thing I was basically right about was like, Peter never really changes. And like, when there's an opportunity to like have him learn something, they always kind of like do some weird like hand wave to be like, no, it's because of this. And in this case, it's, Peter, he's dead. He kind of impulsively gave
like
away.
He is.
Yeah. Like he is. He impulsively gave away his reads of Ralamala Ding Dong, last issue, and like now has paid the consequence. And of course, like we have like, I don't know, what is it, like 15 pages of Coulson being like, I'm going to clean up his body any minute now. It's like, Austin Powers, like trying to stop the steamroller, like just standing there, like, I'm going to do it. But with that said, it's like Syra who's like, wait, no, I have learned something. And because I have learned something, I will save this poor mortal. And make the grandest sacrifice of all, my own immortality, to win the day. So like, Peter doesn't really win. He gets his ass saved by Syra and gets bestowed a gift. And the true hero here is Syra because she learned what love means. I guess, I don't know. It's just like, all right. So am I right? I guess, on a technicality, but at the same time, it's just like, it's also just kind of like the same thing we've been seeing for over a decade now with how this book is managed. And, speaking of the $40,000 that people are getting paid, and, we're doing it again. So there we go. We did it again. Oops.
Yeah. I mean, they do the slightest, like, sort of like we'll give a little whiff of credit to Peter in that, like, her change comes on behalf of witnessing Peter and his undying love. But even that, I don't buy. Like, I mean, like, and maybe in any other Spider-Man comic I would, except for the fact that this comic went out of its way to show us that Peter was like, no, I'm cool. I'm good with this. The world is doomed, and I'm gonna like just let it continue to play out, only for them to like in 2 panels reverse that without really selling us on it. And that's what's frustrating about it is they went through all of the natural setup to get Peter to learn the lesson and be the change agent, and then just didn't. Like, yeah. I don't get it. Like, why did you put in that work to do that only to not? Yeah. Like, it's so strange. And then, like, if it was always going to be Syra that was the one that was going to change, like, I feel like you would structure this entire thing differently, like you would make Syra the final scion, and you would have Spider-Man fighting to save everyone on the planet because he loves them so much, and he wears out all of his lives saving people in the midst of battles that were, promised by this covenant that was set up, right? The title of the book is The 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, like, I mean, I guess we got there, but like you have 8 champions and 8 deaths. Like, I feel like that's already built in there. If it's going to be this, make her the end, have her watch the whole thing, and she is slowly carved away at by his undying sacrifice and battles with these people, and then have this big change at the end. Why did we go through Peter being miserable and giving up? Like none of that adds to the arc that you use to conclude this. It's so strange. I can't even begin to describe it.
I'm just getting stuck on the fact that you pointed out, like, you said 8 deaths of Spider-Man, and we technically only got 6. I have not been this outraged since I saw the never-ending story. But yeah, I mean, not to resort to my own brand of nihilism, Dan, but like it just, the whole Peter is a nihilist thing didn't really matter in the long run, I guess. You know what I mean? Like he because of that nihilism, his big three got killed off, and then he saved them, and he died, and maybe that's the consequences of his irresponsibility, and yet. Nope.
Yeah, I just don't get it. Like, what? Like, why do that if you knew this is where the story is going? It makes no sense to me.
And all the same, like, let it be clear, I'm not advocating to keep Peter dead. Like I thought frankly, the ending to the last issue was just absurd because it was just like, okay, well, how are they going to undo this? Like which I know we always say, but like, that's why it's like, I just wish like, in these stories, we Nick Spencer did this, I think, during one of the issues of his run, or maybe was it that Peter was dead or MJ was, like the car blew up with Osborn or whatever.
The end of Nick Spencer's run where, the explosion and MJ and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just saying to myself, like, just like, like spare me the telegraph, like somebody's dead. First page, next issue. Just kidding. You know what I mean? Like, can we just not use that crutch anymore and just?
It's not even that. It's that we knew it was going to be a hand wave rule break to make it happen. But like literally, Coulson's like, I can't do that, and she's like, please, and he's like, all right, this one time.
Yeah. But just like we had editors back in the day say, no matter what, you can't kill Aunt May. I just want like people to be like, no matter what, you can't like pretend that Peter / Spider-Man is dead for even like a panel. Like just don't paint yourself into that corner. Just tell the story in a different way. Because I think it might lead to an opportunity to actually have Peter do something, like grow. I don't know. Maybe not. I'm just spitballing here.
We don't want any of that growth in a comic unless it's growth into a new toy you can sell. So let's talk about the SPIDER-NAUT.
I mean, you know, we were talking about, for those of you playing the home game, I recently got myself a PS5 and, immediately, I haven't had a PlayStation since the PS2 for what it's worth, people. So like I have a lot of gaming to keep to make up with. And of course, one of the first things I got was the Spider-Man PS. Well, actually I got Spider-Man 2 and Dan was like, no, you have to get the PS. I'm like, okay, fine. So I have the PS4 Spider-Man game, working my way through it. This is a long-winded way of me to say, I cannot wait for the PlayStation game where we have the Spider-NAUT or some variant of it. It's gonna look awesome.
I'm just trying to imagine that swinging through the streets in those games.
Yeah. It's gonna be great. I can't wait.
Well, then maybe you'll get the what is it, the Sin Eater Juggernaut that you might fight against. Who knows? Well, we've got another transformed Juggernaut here. I mean, I guess it's a new Juggernaut. I don't know if it supplants the previous one. This seems to be not granted by the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, so nodding is something that
hot or not.
Hot or not. Oh my god, I want to make a shirt with that on it with the Juggernaut. That's got to be a thing now. Okay, well, add that to our merch store. But Spider-NAUT, again, I wish I didn't know this was coming, because I actually think that like this is a really fun ending to this comic that's like really amazingly done by Ed McGuinness with how the way the suit like slowly phases onto his body and the mask appears on his face. I thought this was really fun, and it's a fun design. Am I sick to death of all of these spider stories just ending with him in a new costume to sell more toys or whatever? Yeah, but like this was cool, and Ed's design is cool, and he's the Spider-NAUT bitch, and I'm there for it.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to add to it. I will reaffirm what you just said. Like, I get that we need solicits and previews to move merch, and the print industry is dying, and we gotta get as many sales as we can, and maybe people will buy this issue up because they think it's gonna be the next collector's item. Send it out to CGC, get your 9/8 slabbed and all that kind of stuff for its appearance of the Spider-NAUT. With all that being said, like, man, like you said, this just would have been a very cool reveal if we had no clue. And it just kind of makes me a little depressed that we are currently living in a world where like you just can't do a reveal like that anymore. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't. There's just no no stomach for it to just really try and surprise the reader. It's like it's all about just, you know, pushing the product and you know, maybe, like I said, trying to siphon off the collector psychos who are gonna like try and maybe buy this issue up because they think it's gonna be, you know, they can sell it for $100 on eBay with, you know, when it's encased in plastic or something. I don't know. It's just silly to me.
I mean, to that note, we already know what the cover of Amazing Spider-Man 975 looks like.
Yeah.
Like 6 months away from now or whenever that's going to be, you know. But yeah, I thought this was cool. It reminded me a little bit, and this is probably like not a really fair comparison, but like to the sort of like the Hobgoblin reveal by JRJR, where you get the little pieces of the thing and then the full reveal. And you know, that's a classic way of revealing something cool like this. And, you know, like, who that character is, I don't know. Is he going to talk like the Juggernaut? Is he going to talk like Peter? I don't know why, if Syra had this power all along, why she didn't use it earlier to stop her brother before Spidey was murdered. But, you know, if this was all...
Why don't they build the airplanes out of the black boxes, Dan? We don't know these things.
We don't know. Yeah, well, you know, again, if this was the story you've described where it was all just big splash pages of dumb stuff, I would be much more into it.
Right.
But, like, it tried to fake being smart. And so now I'm trying to apply smart to it. And that's where I went wrong, Mark.
Yep, clearly. All right. Well, do you want to give this thing a grade?
Yeah, I'm giving this one a C.
I'm going to go C-. I almost went C just sheerly for the art. But like I said, some of the silliness was just too silly. So I'm going to go a minor notch below you.
Yeah, I think it's an average book that's lifted up largely by like the artwork. So C is where I landed.
All right.
Mark, why don't you take us home?
Well, it's that time for all good things to come to an end. So we want to say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning in to this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, this podcast exists because of the support of our listeners on Patreon. For only $4.99 a month, the cost of a new comic, you can help support our show's existence while getting early episodes, including these reviews the same weeks the comics release. We've got like the first 5 episodes of season 7 of our show, a ton of exclusive artwork and a ton of other bonuses already on the Patreon for you to enjoy the minute you sign up. So thanks to everybody who already supports us and our work. And a special shout out to our newest members, Mark Hall, Little Bim Bam, Christian La Liberté, and the amazing Will I Am, who I'm wondering if is recording a like pop single right now.
Wow.
But
louder.
If you want to join their ranks, please go to amazingspidertalk.com and click on the Patreon button and consider signing up while avoiding the 30% Apple surcharge if you do it from within Apple's store. So again, that's amazingspidertalk.com. Why pay 30% extra if you don't have to?
Dan on one sentence. Why is Apple punishing us? Dan on the next sentence. Apple, screw them. Don't do this. If you value Smart's comics criticism and historical analysis, we hope you'll consider supporting us on Patreon. What we do on the show is admittedly niche. Still, we feel that we offer valuable commentary and model fair methods of criticism for a character and medium that rarely receives the kind of consideration we believe it deserves. So if that is valuable to you, we can only continue doing what we do with your support on Patreon.
So Mark, until we launch the amazing Syra Talk podcast, which might have better SEO on Apple Podcasts than the Amazing Spider Talk does, what's our motto?
With great podcasts, there must also come the Amazing Spider Talk.
Don't miss the next installment. Spider-Man, just one of the Spider-Man seems a web.